Hi, everybody. I'm Jay Julio Vela here with the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. Welcome to another edition of Reasonable Doubt with my fellow host, Justin Harris. How you doing?
Hey, what's up? Sorry.
Big shout out to Houston Media Source and Mark Prodel in the booth. Thank you so much for having us once again via Zoom and Facebook Live and streaming. Houston Media Source is rocking and rolling. How you doing, Mark? Thumbs up. And with the special guest today, the very, very, very special guest today, Mr. The one, the only, Jordan Lewis. Jordan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right, man. How are you?
Thank you so very, very good. Thank you so very, very much for being here today. In all seriousness, Jordan is the winner of the Sharon Levine's Unsung Hero Award for the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. Normally, we'd have this big, huge banquet, and Jordan would be coming up, we'd be playing some music, and he'd be walking up to the stage, and everybody would be hooting and hollering and saying, Jordan, Jordan, Jordan. And then he'd give a brilliant, amazing, elaborate speech, and the lights would dim, and everybody would go, wow. But today, we're on Zoom. And Jordan, congratulations. The people have spoken. The HCCLA community has spoken and has, in celebration, awarded you the Unsung Hero Award. To you, I present.
Well, thank you. Last year was a pretty good year, man. It was.
Am I all the hooting and hollering like, woo, Jordan?
One day I'm gonna get graphics down, and if I could figure out how to do like the Snapchat thing and put like awards or little sayings or noises.
Oh yeah, Zoom needs to step it up to the Snapchat level.
I think so. Jordan, you're the star tonight, man. You're the unsung hero.
We're here to sing. We're here to sing your name.
Yeah, the last year was a pretty good year. I had a few trial wins. Got sanctions against the state.
Okay, let's start with that. Let's start with your few trial wins, Jordan. Jordan came out on top. Most not guilties in Harris County. Came out.
JV, what does a few mean to you? If I say, can I borrow a few bucks? What do you think that means?
Well,
how much money do I need?
Around 10. Around
a few
10.
Is 10? Wait, I just borrowed
for Jordan, it's 10. For me, for us common plebes, it's not.
Like 2 or 3.
Yeah, well,
Jordan, what do you say? What do you mean a few wins? How many trial victories did you have in 2019?
Well, I had 10 not guilties in Harris County, 1 in Montgomery County, a couple of hung juries, a couple of mid-trial dismissals. I did have a guilty verdict last year. But
what? Yeah.
Oh, you had one somewhere.
Yeah, it wasn't perfect. It was not. I did not have an undefeated season, but it was pretty good.
Jordan.
Everybody with me here. Yes, Troy McKinney. Aaron Epley says, "Woo!" Troy McKinney's coming in on it. Yeah, Jordan, kicking butt, man, and that's mad props. You're getting props from Troy McKinney.
Amen. So,
and it's still been hard to get to jury trials. I mean, it's picked up since Harvey. We just kind of started getting a little bit more into a roll of things. Courts are getting on a regular schedule over the last 6 months to 9 months, but it's hard to get even 10 trials, much less 10 wins out of Harris County courts right now.
Yeah, it was it was a busy year, but the new judges took the bench in January. I think the first trials that really got underway were into January, early February. My first trial was the end of February, and it was Judge Fleischer's first trial as well. He was excellent. I got to appear in front of a handful of the new judges, and no real complaints. They were all good.
Tell us, a lot of these judges were our colleagues. What was it like practicing in front of them and getting kind of thrown into the fire? Not that, and in the way you were, which we can get into also.
Sure. I mean, it was kind of strange. A handful of them were always senior lawyers to me, and so it wasn't all that weird for me to see them on the bench. There are a few of our colleagues who were peers of mine, and so that was a little bit strange. But all in all, I liked them. So yeah, I mean, it was it's been a good experience. I don't think that I would have had the same record with the prior judges. I got some rulings that I don't think I would have gotten under the old regime.
Like how? Like in what regard?
Some evidence that I think should have been suppressed, but likely would not have been suppressed with most of the prior judges.
Sure.
Things like that. Discretionary calls, which judge you're in front of, can make a huge difference for your client.
Tell us, how was the transition from going Jordan Lewis and Jordan Lewis Law to Flood and Lewis?
It was great. I mean, we've got a great team. We've got for those of you who don't know Andrea, she's like, there's no way any of this works without her. I mean, that's just how it goes. If she had any inkling to be a lawyer, she would be the best DWI lawyer in the area. So, but she doesn't want to do it. She's
too smart
behind the scenes.
She's too smart.
She's the smart one for sure. No question about it.
That's super classy of you, man. And I think the roster at the law office of Tyler Flood is like 10 deep that they've gone through. But Jordan Lewis comes out as the golden boy, as the one on top, and that's a huge deal, man.
Well, thank you. It was a good match. It was a good match.
How did you decide to say, because you already had a successful law practice, okay? You've been practicing, what, 10, 12 years already, about 10, 12 years by now?
Yeah.
And how did you decide to take the leap and say, you know what, I'll leave this? And granted, Tyler Flood's a great avenue and a great mentor and a great lawyer. But how did you decide to say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and leave everything that I've built for 10, 12 years and decide to go into a partnership with the Tyler Flood?
Well, it honestly, it kind of started as a joke. He reached out to me to see if I knew anybody who was looking for work. And at the time I knew a young lawyer that I actually kind of had my eye on, but I thought it was the right thing to do to let him make the call. So I told Tyler that I did have somebody in mind, but I didn't want to go around spreading his business. Let me talk to him, and then, I'll have him get with you. And Tyler replied, well, it's not you, is it? And it just kind of went from there. I don't think either one of us expected it, but we wound up meeting and talking about it. And I think it was the right move for both of us.
Obviously, God bless, and we know that Tyler had some medical issues, had to embrace the idea of change and allowing another heavyweight to come in. How did you embrace that change? In the sense of, granted, a defense lawyer has, a few trials a year, maybe, right? And
Sure.
and going from that to then suddenly, you probably tried 10 cases in 5 weeks. Towards the end, the trial season got pretty heavy. How was it managing going from, having a regular kind of trial docket to having one that is explosive and you're in trial every week? How was that?
It was definitely a change. I mean, that was part of what prompted me, was that, I had not tried a case since Harvey. When Tyler and I joined up, and that would have been, let's see, I guess around Thanksgiving of 18. So a year and a half later, I hadn't tried a case since prior to Harvey. But I mean, it's go ahead.
No, go for it. Hey, look, Mary Ann Huffman just joined the show. Maybe we can ask her a few questions.
Is she gonna come on?
I don't know. She's just joined. I don't mean to think. I'm saying we got the best trial lawyer in town and the future candidate, the Republican DA nominee. You got some words for her, Jordan?
But I mean, it's no, I don't. Not right now, anyway.
So Jordan, what do you, unsung hero? There's so many different awards that your work over the last year would have fallen you under the category of. But I definitely think unsung hero is appropriate for you. Not as many people realize the kind of work that you've done, the advocacy you've done on behalf of your clients to get justice. Why don't we take advantage of the fact that we do have, as JD just said, one of the best trial attorneys in Houston on here? what kind of tips do you have for any other attorneys who are trying cases? Whenever, we haven't said anything about the 800-pound gorilla that's looming over the fact that we're doing this by Zoom during the COVID-19 pandemic shutdown. But whenever things kind of reach a new normal, what kind of tips for trials?
I mean, the number one thing, and this is going to sound so cheesy, but it once it finally clicked, be yourself. Juries can smell a fake. If you feel yourself putting on a character right before the trial starts, throw that away. It's not helping. It's probably hurting. And if you can be the closest thing to a human in the room, then the jury's going to like you. They don't like lawyers, but they like people. And so if you are the closest facsimile to a person in the room, then they're going to find you more trustworthy than the prosecutor. I mean, it seems, it's one of those things that's simple but not easy. But just being yourself, if you have friends, you're likable. I mean, that's just all there is to it. A lot of people get into this, they don't feel like they're very likable or they like the fight. You can be completely difficult with the other side and still be polite and nice and genuine when you're dealing with the jury.
Look, Andrea is saying thank you so much. She's extremely lucky to get to work with such amazing lawyers. You know what this is reminding me of? The Chip and Dale cartoon. We're like, oh no, after you, sir. Thank you very much. Like, the reality is that
at the risk of turning into Chip and Dale, I mean, it's the reality. When I was in trial constantly, there's no way the wheels would have stayed on here without a good support staff in the office keeping things going.
Absolutely.
I mean, I can be in a courtroom all day, 3 or 4 days out of the week, if there are competent people in the office doing the stuff that has to happen in the office. And that's what I didn't have when I was on my own, and what a lot of our colleagues don't have. And so that, you asked earlier, how was it possible to handle that kind of schedule? And that's how, because I had the right people in the office making sure everything else was happening.
So Jordan's unsung hero is the support staff.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
I agree with that completely.
Because you're
mine too.
You're a former flood associate, aren't you, Justin?
I am, but I had support staff. I was support staff for lawyers before I went to law school. I knew that role and I knew how to stay in that lane, I felt like. And when I had my own practice before I worked with Tyler for a while, I relied on support staff. And when working for Tyler, Andrea is one of the most intelligent and experienced criminal defense paralegals there is. And absolutely, Jordan's right. Support staff at that office and anywhere, my support staff in my office currently, we could not be operating the way we are right now during the pandemic or beforehand without their hard work and dedication. So
let's get to know our unsung hero. Jordan, have you always been a lawyer? Were you anything before being a lawyer?
So before I went to law school, I went to A&M Galveston for my undergrad. I have a degree in maritime administration. I haven't used it for a single second. But after I graduated,
administration.
Yeah, it's a business degree with boats.
Captain. That's a shipboat captain.
No. That's what.
You're gonna get the Sea Dog.
No, that was the Marine Transportation Program. Jed Silverman, I believe, went there and went through the Marine Transportation Program and got a Coast Guard license to be a sailor. But no, we were the guys that kept our feet dry and made sure that the guys on the boats had what they needed, and more importantly, that the ship owners got all their money. But I worked at the university for a couple of years, couldn't decide really what I wanted to do with my life. So I was an academic advisor. I taught freshmen. I taught a class on succeeding in college. I did some tutoring with freshmen who were brought in on a provisional program, and then went to law school at first as a part-time student. I stayed working at A&M Galveston while I was going to law school, and then after my first year, I decided to switch over to full-time.
Where'd you go to law school?
U of H.
Nice. I did.
Yeah, I walked onto the mock trial team. I tried out. They said no. I started showing up to practice anyway, and wound up
Of course.
wound up traveling. So
course
yeah, of course I did.
Of course
Um,
you did.
So, and then graduated in '08, went to work right out of school for Dane Johnson and Alan Bear,
Yeah.
doing DWI stuff right from the start. And when I started practicing law, Tyler was one of our biggest competitors. So it was, it's kind of interesting to come full circle.
Everybody wants to know, how did that conversation go to get your name on that board?
Which?
The name on the sign.
Oh, on the sign.
Building. Like,
actually, funny enough, I got a text one day that was like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And it was the design work for it. Only I thought it was the design work for it. It was actually a photo of the sign. So there wasn't there wasn't really a lot of discussion. It was just, all right, so I guess we need to do this,
on the sign.
We need to do that. Yeah.
That's a cool sign too.
It really is. They when he built the building, the city wanted him to keep it because it was historic.
Right.
And so he repurposed it, but I think it adds a lot of character to the property.
How did you feel when you were awarded the Unsung Hero Award by Harris County Criminal Law Association?
I was really honored. Some of the people that I was up against, and especially in the other category where I was nominated for winning some trials and getting sanctions, but I didn't win any capital murders or anything like that. So yeah, I was deeply honored, and I was honored just to have been nominated with some of those other folks.
Speaking of sanctions, let's talk about. Yeah. So you come in and you say, "Hey, the district attorney's office is jacking me around, and they're jacking around everyone else, and they need to get fined or sanctioned." And so Judge Wright ends up sanctioning them, goes up, and things happen. Tell us how to bring us back to step one.
Okay. So
yeah, we've heard a lot about this, and I told JD earlier I want to hear this from the horse's mouth. And just make sure it's clear, we don't talk about this a lot on the show, but for those who don't know, sanction is a legal punishment by a court for not following a court's order or something. That Jordan actually probably has a better definition of it. So
sure. No, I think that's
background on that too.
I think that's a pretty close to perfect explanation. A sanction is basically a punishment for breaking the rules. So in this case, my client had been arrested in October of 2018. At the time that he was arrested, the DA's office had already been given records related to the arresting officer's disciplinary history that went back for years. He had been suspended multiple times for various acts of misconduct. Some of it was genuinely bad. Some of it was just really poor judgment stuff and stupidity. But it was bad enough that they had suspended him multiple times. The week after our client was arrested, we filed a discovery request, specifically including, we want to know anything you know about his disciplinary history. And that, that's both under the discovery statute, Code of Criminal Procedure 3914, but also under the Supreme Court cases that says that we're entitled to know about impeaching evidence about witnesses. So we asked for that in October. They give us absolutely nothing. In May, still nothing. We set the case for trial in July. The week before trial, Friday, 10 days before trial, the prosecutor sends me an email that says, "Hey, we have a disclosure about one of our officers." Doesn't tell me who it is, doesn't tell me what it is, just we have Brady evidence that we're required to disclose that we haven't disclosed. So I spend the next several business days trying to get that. I think I'm in trial down in Galveston, or maybe up in Conroe that following week. So my associate goes in, they show him a letter. They don't give him a copy, but they show him a letter that says, on this day, on these 4 dates, this officer was suspended from anywhere from like 2 to 14 days. He asks for records related to it. I get nothing. The night before trial starts, they finally send me a copy of that letter, but I still haven't seen a single record about the case. So we go in front of the judge. I ask it's supposed to be trial day. We're getting continued for another reason, but I tell the judge, hey, they still have Brady they haven't given me. Judge tells them to turn it over, and they say, no, we want an in-camera review, meaning we want you to look at this stuff and determine what I'm going to have to turn over. So the judge does the in-camera review, determines that all 40 pages need to be disclosed, and
Wow.
the state refuses unless he'll enter a protective order. Well, so they ask for these protective orders every time they are going to turn over records of police misconduct. But the law says that if a police department has sustained a finding of misconduct and taken formal disciplinary action against an officer, it's public information as a matter of law. If you file a Public Information Act request, you're going to get that information. So I thought it was a particularly bad faith case. They had delayed for months and not turned anything over. Then when they were finally called on it, they demanded a protective order for for public records. And so I asked the judge to sanction them. I didn't think he was going to sanction them. I really, more than anything, wanted to get their attention. And it seems to have gotten their attention.
Had you seen that as a systematic problem at the DA's office? A lot of us see district attorneys not really handing over Brady material or impeachment material.
Or playing this little game where they have the effect of not turning it over.
Right. It is a pattern in practice. It's coming from the person who is in charge of maintaining their Brady database, Donna Cameron. She told us in open court that she's got an agreement with these police departments that she won't turn over any Brady evidence without demanding a protective order. And she does it without regard to whether it's actually privileged or confidential information or if it's public information. I think it's illegal.
Wait. She admitted that on the record in court?
Yeah, they have a memorandum of understanding, apparently, that they won't release disciplinary records without a protective order.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know we won't do it even if there's a judge ordering us to do so.
No. I mean, it's basically that's why we have to go to the judge and get the judge to order them to turn it over, because she won't voluntarily turn it over unless we'll agree to a protective order.
Okay.
So she's requiring the judge to order them to follow the law before she'll follow the law, because she has agreed with these police departments to not follow the law.
I agree. That's extremely problematic. I just wanted to make sure she was still not refusing to do it, even if a judge ordered it without a protective order.
No. They'll comply with the judge's order if the judge orders it. But the fact that we're having to get the judge involved when they have clear constitutional and statutory duties is ridiculous.
How is that?
I don't. These protective orders are ridiculous. Just they're facially unenforceable and unethical for a defense attorney to agree to, particularly the portions at the end of them that say 10 days after the case is closed, we're required to turn all copies back over to their office. The Texas Supreme Court is extremely clear. We do not own the client's file. We cannot make that decision for our client. The client owns the file, and we hold it in their trust. We can't turn that stuff back over. So I have all kinds of problems with protective orders. But
what's the difference between the Attorney General saying, hey, when you ask for the personnel file and the Attorney General say, hey, open investigation, not commenting or things like that? I mean, is that any different?
Well, if these were open investigations, yeah, it would have been. But these were like, going back anywhere from 3 to 10 years. I mean, they were all closed investigations.
Fair enough.
If they had sent this stuff to the Attorney General, the Attorney General would have said, no, the law is clear. There was a sustained finding of misconduct. You imposed formal discipline. This is a public record. And all of the records relating to that discipline. So the investigator, the IAD report, the investigation, witness statements, all that is public information. But the state...
Troy McKinney just said Jordan is spot on correct. So I think that's the you know what you're talking about.
Yep.
Kind of.
Well, unfortunately, the First Court of Appeals disagreed.
Well, okay. So you're in you're in the courtroom. Judge Wright is sitting there on his bench with his horns, and he says, "You know what, state, screw you. You withheld evidence." Did he find that it was intentional, that they intentionally withheld evidence?
He found that there was willful misconduct. Well, you know what? I need to go back and look at the order. The order that I had presented him that he signed found that they had engaged in bad faith misconduct in this case, and that it was part of a pattern and practice that they engage in just generally in their cases. I presented affidavits from 2 other lawyers saying, I've had this exact same thing happen to me. I have had prosecutors refuse to turn over Brady evidence to me unless I would agree to a protective order, and they do that without regard to whether it's private or public information.
It was a big deal because I don't think anyone had ever heard of a judge sanctioning the district attorney's office for this type of misconduct in forever. I don't think it ever happened.
I couldn't
Jordan,
find another case
you
where the court
researched
had.
it, right?
And say again?
You researched it, right?
I did. I could not. That was the first question that the appellate panel asked me, and my answer was no. I couldn't find a case previously where this has happened.
So Judge Wright says, pay the man $500, and it was pay you?
Yeah.
Now,
I mean, that.
Jordan.
Well, I mean, I didn't get out of. Don't get me wrong. I didn't get out of Austin with the money. I didn't expect to, quite frankly. My view as soon as the order came down was they're probably going to appeal, and if the appeals court can find a way to give the government what they want, that's what the appeals court is for.
well, this was a huge case of first impression because it could have implications statewide. It could have implications for potentially opening the door to massive litigation in regards to failure to comply with Brady or Michael Morton evidence or anything that could or is potentially exculpatory. It could have been a big can of worms from the DA's offices across the land.
Well, I mean, one of the justices asked me, asked me, and then during rebuttal, maybe asked the prosecutor, with this, look, the purpose of a money sanction is to get the attention of the misbehaving party. Like, hey, this is not okay. In fact, it's not only it's so not okay that you're going to bear the cost of. And that was what I was angry about. Was I was entitled to this stuff. I not only were they refusing to give it to me, now I have to prepare for a stupid hearing on a protective order that they're not entitled to, on public information, and I have to spend time over my weekend getting ready for that hearing instead of any of the other number of things that I would rather have been doing.
$500 is light.
Yeah, I asked for a lot more.
He asked for $2,000.
Yeah.
Right. He asked for like $2,000. No, just fine. He should have might as well ask for 10. I think. I mean, figure it out, right? So
then the state filed a 20-some page brief. But interestingly, they never alleged that the judge didn't have the authority to sanction them. They just
okay, that's interesting because I suppose then the appellate court ends up coming up with the idea that the judge doesn't have the right to do that, even though that wasn't something that was lodged by the state.
Well, it was never argued by the state in the trial court. It was the only thing they argued on mandamus, and the Court of Appeals accepted that. And
had you ever made a live oral argument to any of the Court of Appeals?
No, that was my first. It was a lot of fun.
I remember sending a blast out, go and check this out. I was stuck in court. I was probably stuck in who knows what court, but I was so mad that I couldn't go see it. Talk to us about your feelings. How are you feeling? Where were you? I mean, I saw you immediately afterwards, and we hung, but talk to me about you going in there. How did you prepare yourself? What was going through your stomach and mind?
So shortly before I did that, I'd watched some other oral arguments, videos of lawyers that I know and trust. Talked to one of them about it, and I had watched a guy go right ahead of him, and he told me that lawyer and the lawyer who had gone ahead of the one that I know did a bang up job, wound up winning. In fact, that case was the TIBA case of the week this past week. But in talking to the lawyer I know, he had mentioned that he had a conversation with that other lawyer about how to do it. And the other lawyer said, look, I'm a trial lawyer, so I just acted like I was talking to a jury that was much, much smarter than I was. And so that was kind of one of the attitudes I took in. And the judges, one of the judges I don't think ever bothered to look at me. I mean, it was pretty clear where that judge was going before they even walked into the room. One of them was, I would say, initially openly hostile to my position, but softened on a couple of points once I explained a couple of things, and then once one of them gave the state a fairly hard time during their argument, but it was a unanimous decision. I mean, I didn't get a dissent.
So let's talk about their decision. Ultimately, what ends up happening, man?
Ultimately, they decided that 3914 is absolutely silent as to sanctions, and that in the pre-existing case law, the courts had routinely held that a judge could, within his discretion, exclude evidence due to a discovery violation, but that was a pretty extreme sanction. And so the court interpreted that to mean that that's the most serious sanction that a criminal court can impose for a discovery violation, which I think is not right. I mean, courts have inherent authority to sanction. The rules of civil procedure just set out when they can exercise that authority. And
what ended up happening with the original case, your case?
The original case was dismissed because, as part of the same sanction order, he also excluded that officer's testimony. And without any of that officer's testimony, they couldn't make their case.
So they dumped the case. Did they refile it?
No. They dumped it, and then filed a writ of mandamus on the sanctions part of the order.
The real question that everybody wants to know, Jordan, is do you wear pants when you Zoom?
Well, I'm actually wearing pants today.
You're not
The only show us the answer is yes.
Don't stand up. Don't stand up, man. Look, well, Jordan Lewis, the unsung hero for the year, who carried a lot of weight, who gave it to the state, who almost made some landmark law, and is a tenacious lion and trial warrior, the Unsung Award recipient. Talk to us about it. Unsung.
Well, wait, I got a question off of the appeal. So you talked about your feelings, and that was your first time, and I guess you haven't done it since then, arguing in front of a court of appeals. I heard that you got like a comment from one of the judges about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, so one of my primary arguments was basically preservation. The state had filed a 20-some page brief and never once argued that the judge didn't have the authority. And so what I was trying to tell the appellate justice was, I'm not an appellate lawyer, I'm a trial lawyer, but the one thing that I do know about practice in the appeals court is that's not the place to raise new arguments. You don't get to raise new arguments there that you didn't present to the trial court to rule on. And then when I said that, he said something along the lines of, well, I couldn't tell, or something along those lines.
That's a nice compliment.
Yeah, he was very complimentary. He was the one that initially was pretty hostile, but had kind of softened by the end of it.
But still ruled against you.
Still ruled against me.
That's just ridiculous, because
he pinned the opinion against me.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Well, at least he said he was very impressed by your
and I've seen other lawyers talk about this too. A judge complimenting you on your advocacy is usually not good for your client.
Oh, I know. It's not good for your side.
Right.
But I've read the case law that says that the appropriate remedy is exclusion of the evidence. That case law does not say, and that's it. Nothing beyond that. The court of appeals really, it was a gut punch to the judge in the trial court, right? I mean, they took away what is any trial judge supposed to do? If you can't just slap a $500 fine on the largest law firm in the state of Texas, like, for not following basic law, then what's to stop him from doing the same thing on any other case? Well, and they're continuing to do this.
There's nothing to stop them, but this is kind of like, I mean, that's just status quo. I mean, it's not like things got any worse. It's not like things got any worse. But at the end of the day, there is now one more opinion out there that's binding in our area that says that if the state plays games in discovery, that it's well within a trial court's discretion, even after 3914, to exclude that evidence. So,
Well,
I mean,
thank you for that case law. So we can use that reinforced.
If there is a bright side here, that's it. I mean, that's a little melodramatic. I mean, the reality is it was way out of left field. I was simply trying, more than anything, I was trying to get the Harris County District Attorney's Office's attention and bring to their attention that they're out of line, they're not following the law, and that these protective orders are ridiculous. I will say this. Judge Wright imposed those sanctions in, I want to say, August of this past year. September, October, November, December, I didn't have as much trouble getting Brady evidence. I still had prosecutors telling me, well, the sixth floor is telling me I can't give them this stuff. And I said, well, at one point I said, well, tell Donna that unless we need to have another sanctions hearing, I'd like my stuff. And I got my stuff within a few days. So I don't know that will continue to work, but the reality is it got their attention.
So are they giving it to you without a protective order?
They're still asking for the protective order, but they're not.
They're just making the judge deny it.
Yeah, they're making the judge deny it, and most of them are denying it. I haven't seen a judge impose one of these.
How much does it cost if I say chicken on TV?
Oh.
Well, okay, that's chicken. And you can bill me twice for it because I'm sick and tired of this.
Look, hey, Tom Burns just joined the show. Maybe Tom can tell us some inside workings of Kim Ogg's administration.
Yeah,
Hey,
I'd love to hear their defense for, because all they've argued up to this point is there was nothing improper. We weren't out of line. Brady only kind of applies. 3914E only, or H only kind of applies if we get the protective order we want. I would love to hear their argument for why that's what the law says.
Okay, we've had two comments on Facebook Live regarding the beard. Troy McKinney, the beard staying, and Rick Oliver's calling you Merlin. And for Rick Oliver to give anybody a compliment, it's a big deal. And it was I like the
Merlin
beard.
is a good one. I like Merlin. Well earned.
Well, it's Jordan Lewis, unsung but hung. Jury. Award recipient. So speaking of orders, how about before we move on, Jordan, last thoughts on this, man? You are our HCCLA's award recipient for the Unsung Hero. You have been an amazing asset and an incredible advocate to all your clients, and we really admire you and are in appreciation of being your colleague and watching you work. Last thoughts on that? We'll move on.
Well, I'm just I'm really honored. It was a good year. The accolades are nice. It's not what I usually chase after, but it's been nice. So thank you guys.
That's why you got the Unsung Hero Award, because you don't chase after the accolades. There's also some kind of issue, like now you're sung. So are you still an unsung hero?
I wondered. I've wondered about that. I don't really know the answer.
It's kind of oxymoronic giving an award for an unsung hero.
Well, what award are you going for next year, man?
Like I said, I don't. I truly don't chase the accolades. I was honored to be. I was honored to be nominated for Lawyer of the Year, but then when I saw who else was on that list, I mean, I won a handful of misdemeanors. It was cool. It was a lot of fun. I love doing it, but there are some people out here literally saving people's lives. So I try to keep it all in perspective.
Troy McKinney says, hung or unsung, he's still a legal stud. That was good.
Thank you, Troy.
That was really good, Troy. Okay, speaking of orders, and
you have to say it in Troy's voice if you're gonna say Troy things.
No, dude, nobody can. Nobody can do Troy's voice.
Look, so okay, another big topic. Let's talk about. Look, now Rick is saying subsequent winner could be a barred winner. I don't know. We need to keep up. All right, we're moving on. So, okay, Judge Morton was commenting on Facebook too. I told him we'd talk about this order. It's a big deal. Okay, so generally, prior COVID, inmates are getting 3-for-1 or 2-for-1 or trustee credit in the jails. So, for example, let's keep it easy. Someone gets sentenced to 90 days in jail. In the old days, pre-COVID, if he has 30 days, typically that's a time served. So 30 equals 90, 3-for-1, or at the very least, 2-for-1. So 45 equals 90. However, what we have seen is because of the, please chime in if I'm going to misstate anything. Because of the governor's order, the Harris County Sheriff, who's in charge of providing jail credit to individuals in custody, has suspended providing good time 3-for-1, 2-for-1, 25, 3-for-1, 2-for-1 trustee credit to those individuals. And so now 90 days means 90 days if individuals fall under certain criteria. However, what we've seen, number one, is that information wasn't disseminated across the defense bar. So some individuals are pleading guilty to some offenses who are assuming that they're getting out, but aren't.
Not just assuming. Sometimes the judge told them, okay, that's a time served, you'll be out tonight. Not knowing they were only a third of the way through their time.
And so Judge Morton issued an order, and please, can you keep and people watching, keep us up to date, because I just received this order today, and I don't know. Look, it was signed today, so this is kind of real time stuff. Jordan, do you have any sort of background on this that you can provide us?
I don't have any background besides what's in the actual order that Judge Morton signed today, but the long and short of it is that the governor's order purported to suspend the sheriff's ability to grant good time credit and release people early if they were convicted of certain offenses, including basically assaultive offenses. I think the governor's...
that's, by the way, from what I understand and what I've seen, that's ever in their lives. They could have 20 years ago had a domestic violence case, and they're in jail today on a criminal trespass, and their criminal trespass would be fine for a 3-for-1 credit, but that old domestic violence case falls under that category. Is that not right?
I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that question.
That's what was explained to me.
It's my opinion that if you have any sort of assaultive offense in your background, you are not getting 3-for-1. You're not getting 2-for-1.
That's
you're
right.
getting day for day.
That's my understanding as well.
Yeah, and that may, like I said, I'm not sure. I literally just got a copy of this order as we were getting ready to go on the air tonight. But the long and short of it is that this guy was in custody. He accepted a plea bargain that under the normal good time credit calculations by the Harris County Sheriff, both, his lawyer told him, all right, you've done this much time. This is your sentence with the good time credit they grant. This is going to be time served. You'll be out today. But then once he got back over to the jail, the sheriff said, hey, look, pursuant to the governor's order, I can't give you any good time credit because this is an assaultive offense. And so you're going to have to do day for day.
I wonder if the sheriff is saying he can't or he won't.
My understanding, and given who the sheriff is and sort of political connections there, my understanding was that it was the sheriff was saying, the governor says we can't grant good time credit here.
Trump McKinney said the governor orders exceeds the scope of the governor's authority under Chapter 41 and is, in his opinion, and at least in Judge Morton's opinion, too, unconstitutional.
That is precisely what Judge Morton held. Judge Morton held that under the Texas Constitution, only the legislature can suspend the operation of laws. It does give the governor the ability to declare emergency and change regulations or suspend the imposition or suspend the operation of regulations to the extent necessary to protect public safety. But it doesn't give him the authority to suspend laws and the Code of Criminal Procedures law. And so basically the judge held that with respect to this part of the governor's order, it's unconstitutional and not enforceable.
And so, to be clear, the sheriff determined that if someone's previously been convicted of a crime that involves violence or the threat of physical violence. So, for example, threat of physical violence, even if that, a threat to physical violence, that's incredible. That could mean all sorts of things. You're just a threat, and you're not going to get your.
Yeah, and in fact, the language in the governor's order is apparently preclude the grant of commutation of time for good conduct, industry, and obedience to achieve the release of any person who has previously been convicted of or is currently serving a sentence for a crime that involves physical violence or the threat of physical violence. So yeah, that can't be interpreted as in any way other than current offense or any previous conviction. And I think the governor's idea was to keep a sheriff in order to keep the sheriff from emptying out the jail in response to COVID, just granting 20-1 good time for everybody and get everybody out. I think that's what he was trying to prevent.
Look at that.
He didn't have the authority to do it.
I'm reading this order, and it said that the sheriff found that an attempted felon in possession of a firearm, meaning like he went for the gun and missed. I'm kidding, but that's, I've always wondered about the attempts. But that is categorized as a crime involving physical violence or the threat to physical violence. That's how broad these things are.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. It just kind of shows the danger of letting a cop interpret the law, I guess.
Right.
This is a big deal because the district attorneys, the assistant district attorneys are going to have to start to, instead of offering 90 days, they're going to have to start to offer 30. And they don't like doing that because they love the idea of going back and looking at the judgments in 5 or 6 years from now and say, oh, well, look, he got 90 on this.
Oh, he got 100 days.
Yeah, so we're going to do 101 this time, and we can't go any lower than the last one. That's
right.
A big deal. And for Judge Morton to basically go up and say, hey, Governor, what you're doing is wrong. And hey, Sheriff, you think Sheriff would just pass the buck to Judge Morton?
Or
you think he was? What do you think?
I don't know enough about it. It seems weird to me that the sheriff would put a lot of resources into fighting something like this on a guy that got a misdemeanor sentence and 3 weeks, or I guess 3 months ago, would already have gotten out.
Sheriff Gonzalez has not made has not been shy about saying that he wants as few people in the jail during the pandemic as possible. He's gotten into Twitter fights with Chief of Police Art Acevedo over that subject alone. And
yeah, so I can't see him doing anything other than just cutting the guy loose.
So who would have to challenge Judge Morton's determination of unconstitutionality? The Attorney General? Or would it take someone in Harris County who wants it to be enforced?
It was a writ of habeas corpus, so I guess the state would have to appeal it.
Okay.
Or maybe the sheriff. If the sheriff wanted to challenge it, he could probably mandamus the judge. But I don't know.
Speaking of Art Acevedo, he's been in the news recently for denying body cameras of HPD to be released to the public. So the Chronicle wrote an article that 6 people have been killed by HPD in the last month. And so we have individuals like Randall Callahan and a couple other individuals that are getting involved in asking the chief of police to release these body cameras in the wake of all these black people getting killed by cops. And it's not to say, I don't know how many other people are being killed by cops, but as Will Smith said, racism isn't new, it's just getting filmed. And so I just thought I'd say that.
I picked the picture that I've got right behind me right now for a reason. And it's because of the looks on their faces. The looks on their faces is literally, yeah, and what are you going to do about it? As the one on this one right here is kneeling with his knee on a man's neck for at least 4 minutes that we have video of. And I mean, just that look, daring any one of the bystanders to come and try to do something about it that's, it's, I think it sums it up pretty well. They operate with impunity and take deep offense anytime anybody has any questions about whether.
Well, the other thing that's interesting about their facial expression is I've seen this video. They're in the process, at least the officer, was it Tao with his glasses on?
No, that's Chauvin, and
Chauvin.
this is Officer Tao.
Tao, okay. So they're killing someone right now.
Yeah,
Like,
and that look of combined. So what? And what are you going to do about it? Is I mean, it's emblematic. And interestingly, Acevedo was on TV yesterday condemning this stuff and saying this sort of thing sets us back and blah blah blah. Well, yeah, cops killing citizens and then refusing to answer any questions about what happened. Yeah, it sets back community relations.
Community relations, for sure.
Release the body cameras. What's the deal? Apparently that one guy had all kinds of problems. He's been involved in people have been dying around him for the last 10 years.
Yeah, which is not terribly surprising when you go back and look at this stuff. A surprising when you go back and look at police use of force complaints, they're not normally distributed. They're not evenly distributed. You have a handful of serious offenders. And then the reason I made sure to put up a picture of Tao as well as Chauvin. Chauvin is the guy that killed the man. He's the one that put his knee on the guy's neck and held him down long enough to kill him. This is the guy who literally stood there daring the other people around to come and do something about it. It takes both kinds of bad cop in order for you have to have this guy in order for this guy to survive for as long as he did.
Right.
That's why I intentionally picked a picture of both. This man is a murderer. This man helped him do it, and you can't have him without a whole bunch of hims. And the reality is, as many good cops as we have, even too many of the ones that consider themselves good cops are actually this guy who look the other way when their fellow officers misbehave.
Right. What have you heard about? I don't know if it was just in Minnesota, but I've heard that there's some legislation being discussed that would make a new law that would require a law enforcement officer to intervene if they see another law enforcement officer using excessive force. I think it was kind of a duty shift, kind of like when you become aware of abuse of a child or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely necessary. I mean, normally in America, you don't have a responsibility to intervene in the event of a crime. And the Supreme Court has held that police don't have any duty to protect you. They can protect you and they can also hurt you, but they don't have a duty to protect you. And so I think it's critically important that if we're going to give these guys badges and guns and sticks and the right to use them on us, that we ought to impose a duty on them that they have an obligation to protect a citizen who is being assaulted and or murdered by a police officer.
At least find that there's a duty to protect them from another officer. I mean, I can understand, it may not be the Supreme Court drawing a line somewhere saying, they don't have to protect you in this circumstance or that circumstance, but to protect you from another one of their own, I think that should be very clear.
There's no reason that Tao should not be criminally liable for just standing there and watching one of his fellow officers kill somebody. None whatsoever.
Rick Oliver says anarchy is the natural and predictable response where citizens begin to doubt the societal premise. That's solid, Rick. That's solid. Let me ask you this.
What other option is there? I mean, right? What other option is there? It's just the same sentiment I was frustrated with the Court of Appeals taking away all teeth from Judge Wright's ruling. Now, yeah, great. There's case law that says if you don't do this, you're going to lose that trial. But things have to matter.
Let me ask you this, Jordan, and Justin and the viewers, as trial lawyers, as one of the top the top in Harris County, Jordan. How do you find it in these COVID times? Do you think it's going to be more difficult to catch acts like this by law enforcement or acts like that we saw you litigating in Judge Wright's court? Do you think it's going to cause an uptick in these kind of things or make it more difficult for us to find him?
Well, I mean, with respect to in court, I mean, the reality is it's going to be a long time before we have trials again. And the case with the sanctions, the only reason I found out that there was any Brady is because we had trial coming up in 10 days, and some prosecutor had a checklist that says, have you turned over the Brady? And she didn't know enough to just hide it better. And so, yeah, I mean, I do think that we're going to, once trials start again, I do think we're going to see a huge uptick in late Brady disclosures, because it's not a late disclosure until they fail to disclose it in time for trial. So
what do you think about Zoom trials? And like, for example, Zoom, what about other hearings, protective order hearings, right? Those are ancillary. What about those?
Look, I mean, some critical infrastructure things are going to happen, and Zoom is better than them not happening. But jury trials, no, I don't. I have zero interest in a jury trial by Zoom. The energy in the room, working with that, is how good trial lawyers win cases. I'm not giving. I mean, you'll have to drag me kicking and screaming out of the courtroom. I'm not going to wear a mask either.
Amen.
But will you wear pants?
Yeah. I mean, we're back in court, right? Not on Zoom.
Oh, fair enough. Well, I was kind of thinking of like not wearing them all together, just in general. But.
No, man, I'm trying to win. I want these people to like me.
Well, Jordan,
he's on a streak. He wins when he wears pants. So.
Yes, this is true. This is true.
Never lost a trial with a pair of pants on.
Oh, well, that is true.
No, that's not true. I've lost plenty of trials with pants.
I said it backwards. I was hoping that the 1 minute. Can't let anything by Jordan.
Jordan, we have about a minute left. I just want to say you got the last word, man. I mean, unsung hero. I mean, Jordan, send us home.
I'm just, I'm hoping that everybody's staying safe and sane in all this. I'm ready to get back to work. I'm ready to get back to trial. It's going to be a long time though, and it's going to be even longer before we have jurors that are worth having, because the jurors we like are not going to show up to the first few calls.
Predictions, when we having jury trials in reality?
Next year.
You think 2021?
I think we'll get a couple in August, and then when the weather starts cooling around in northern parts of the country, the stuff is going to come back again, and we're going to be right back to shutdown.
Justin, prediction, how many jury trials is Jordan Lewis going to win next year?
They're going to all be in 2021, because I agree they're probably not going to really get into like moving with those until then. Was it 11 last year? So 12?
I wouldn't mind getting 12 trials next year. I don't expect to do another one this year.
That's going to be the challenge again.
Justin, why don't you send us out, man?
All right. Well, thanks for everybody watching. Thanks for everybody participating tonight. Big shout out to Houston Media Source, HCCLA, JV, Jordan Lewis, now sung hero. Thanks very much. See y'all next week.
Thanks, guys.
Adios, amigos.
That was great.